Family members of hostages held in Gaza say the world is waiting on Hamas. The terror group still hasn't agreed to a deal to release their loved ones.
Well, meanwhile, President Biden is demanding Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declare a ceasefire with no mention of the hostages. CBN's Julie Stahl reports from Jerusalem.
President Biden told Univision that Netanyahu's handling of the war is a mistake. He also said Israel should call a ceasefire, but did not link it to the release of the hostages held by Hamas.
What I'm calling for is for the Israelis to just call for a ceasefire, allow for the next 6-8 weeks total access to all food and medicine going into the country.
Despite increasing pressure from its strongest ally, Israel continues its plan for an invasion of Rafah and the destruction of Hamas.
We will complete the elimination of the Hamas battalions, including in Rafah. No force in the world will stop us. There are many forces trying to do this, but it will not help because this enemy, after what it has done, will not do this again.
Netanyahu says Israel has set a date for the invasion. Despite reports that Israel's defense minister said there's no date, CBN News has learned that Yoav Gallant says that date is dependent on both humanitarian and operational preparations. And as world pressure mounts, members of the governing coalition repeat warnings Israel's existence is at stake if it doesn't defeat Hamas.
Our friends from all around the world need to understand that any pressure on the state of Israel to stop the war is actually a pressure for to make Israel sign a suicide pact.
On the legal front, there are accusations that Israel is committing genocide. On Capitol Hill, U.S. Senator Tom Cotton asked Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin about that charge.
I want to address what the protesters raised earlier. Is Israel committing genocide in Gaza?
Senator Cotton, we don't have any evidence of genocide being created.
So that's a no. Israel's not committing genocide in Gaza.
We don't have evidence of that.
Down the street at the White House, family members of American hostages met with Vice President Kamala Harris.
We have heard is that there is a deal on the table right now that all of the parties agree to and are willing to work with. We are waiting now, and the world waits for Hamas to get to yes. It is in their court. There is no reason not to move forward on this deal.
The U.S. also urged Hamas to accept a serious offer on the table, but there are reports Hamas has already rejected that deal. Gil Hoffman, executive director of Honest Reporting, told CBN News with 133 hostages still in captivity, Israelis are praying for a Passover miracle.
We are all praying, and we appreciate the prayers of Christian supporters of Israel around the world for our hostages to come home ahead of the Passover holiday, to be redeemed, to be with their families at the Passover Seder table. We need a miracle, and for that we need prayers.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
We do need a miracle, but we also need to watch what we say and make sure we're making a very clear call. Hamas is the enemy here. They were the ones that launched a horrific attack on October 7th. On October 6th, there was peace. Israel wasn't having anything to do with Gaza. IDF soldiers weren't there. The citizens were obviously under a problem. The surveys show that about 70% of them had what is called now food insecurity, where they didn't know where their next meal was coming from. That's because all of the humanitarian aid that was being poured into Gaza was diverted into rocket attacks and building tunnels. It wasn't there to actually help people in Gaza. So the main problem for the citizens of Gaza is Hamas. The main problem here is Hamas. We have to keep that in mind. The pressure should never be on Israel. They were the victim of the attack, and they have to respond because Hamas has said, we're going to do this again and again and again until there is no more Israel. Let's wake up to that. They're not going to change. They're not going to come to peace. The pressure should be on them because we're at a tipping point for the entire ideology of what is called from the river to the sea. That has been the slogan of the Palestinian cause going all the way back to 1948. So when you hear that, what you're listening to is a call for genocide, a call to end the state of Israel. We can't possibly support that. Israel has a right to exist. The UN created it in 1948. Then the U.S. recognized the modern state of Israel. That's been established international law. So all of these calls that somehow or other there's genocide going on, well, that's from the river to the sea is a very definite call for genocide. It means we're going to kill every single Jew in Israel. When you hear this apartheid state, in Israel, if you're Muslim, you're a full citizen. You have the right to vote. You can freely travel. You can run for office. You can be elected to office. Where the apartheid is, if you're Jewish, you can't possibly walk the street of Ramallah. You can't walk in Gaza. If you do, you would be killed. So let's be clear. And say the real problem here is this ideology. The real problem is Hamas. And any call for Israel to have a unilateral ceasefire is just giving aid and comfort to Hamas. This ideology can't stand. They need to understand, no, the world stands with Israel. We stand with Israel. Now, our current president, there's a Yiddish proverb, you can't dance at two weddings. He's trying to dance at two weddings. He's trying to hold on to political hope in Michigan at the same time solve an international crisis. You can't do both. You have to be clear and clear in your messaging so that Hamas gets the message. You can't survive this. What you did on October 7th is beyond any kind of peace negotiation. You have to unconditionally surrender. You have to release the hostages. You have to lay down your arms, and you have to stop attacking Israel.